Good day, listeners. Welcome to the podcast with Martin Barna. Today, I have a pleasure and honor to welcome Mr. Phil Learney, the UK coach and coach of coaches. Good day, Mr. Learney. Thank you for accepting the invitation.
How are you doing, Martin? You all right? You're very welcome. Good to see you again.
I am very glad that you've accepted the invitation, and just a few basic things about Mr. Learney so you know who it is. I think you know, but just the basics. Mr. Learney is a personal trainer for 20 years, but in last years, he's not focusing on personal training. He's coach of coaches. So he develops people like me to be better trainers and better nutritionists throughout his advanced coaching academy. Is it right, Mr. Learney?
Correct, yep.
Correct, okay. Also, you are the author of a clothing brand, Be an Athlete, if I'm not mistaken, and HMN24. Yep. It is your new project. Can you tell us something more about it?
Yeah, so that's a culmination of years and years of obviously being in an industry that's focused around human performance. So myself and a good friend of mine, Jason Rickaby, he was the founder of PhD Nutrition. So he founded PhD Nutrition. He exited that business, and we've known each other for around about 20 years, and we've always talked about doing something together. And obviously, human performance is something that's very dear to both of us, and something we've seen in particularly the sports nutrition industry that hasn't been probably handled very well, and probably hasn't been catered for terribly well. So what we've done is we've developed Human 24. It's led by content, education, and the main focus is all around human performance. We have a product offering coming out in April, which again is all about human performance, about cognitive, mental, physical performance, and the support of that. So yeah, it's a brand that is the culmination of 20 years of experience from both of us in slightly different angles, and we've brought that together now as a brand. So yeah, super exciting.
I'm also excited because I loved your ACA. It is a very good academy, and I think this will be a very good new. Let's say it will be product or some service.
Both.
Both, perfect. Very
yeah. So
very
what we do, our website and everything like that will be all orientated around education, again with the human performance narrative, and our product is all focused on human performance. So looking at the 24-hour day, and outside of sports and outside of physiques and blah blah blah, we're looking at every human being able to optimize their day.
That is wonderful. Is there anything else you do I didn't mention?
No, I think you've kind of, you've summarized a lot of it.
Yeah, okay. So I know that you are no longer a personal trainer, or at least you don't have clients. I believe so. But are there some people who really want so much to train with you that you do it? Some celebrities or anything?
Yes and no. I haven't trained anyone now for, I think it'll be nearly 2 years. I retired from personal training. Well, no, actually, it'll be more than 2 years. It'll be close to 3 or 4 years because I used to do a lot of work with actors and actresses, just projects now and again with people for movie roles and things like this. So I had a quite good relationship with one of the studios, and they approached me with they actually approached me to find a trainer for one of their actors. And upon a little bit of investigation, I found out that he was a young lad. This would have been a major role for him to get had he gotten it, because he was an upcoming actor. No one really knew who he was, etc., etc. So I said, look, if you can get him to me, I'll train him on a weekly basis. So they would put him in a car, and they'd travel him quite a considerable amount of miles to come and train with me, literally on my doorstep. So it was so I looked after him. He didn't get the role in the end. This was for the movie Aladdin, and they gave it to somebody way more well known, and that was the last sort of person I trained. So no, I get a lot of inquiries, but again, it's just something that's out of my bandwidth right now. I just don't have the room for it. So too busy with everything else.
Yeah, I understand that you want to spread the information and make our industry better. So if you focus on coaches, coaches will do the work, and this will have better impact than if you train just one person, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. You know, it's just that passing down of information. Ultimately, you know, I've spent 20 years, well, more than 20 years learning an awful lot, making a lot of mistakes. And obviously my role now is really to pass that information on and use it to help other people and to help, you know, coaches develop their businesses, to get better results with their clients, to relay information that's correct, and you know, and bring all that to the fray, really.
I must say that you've helped me a lot, really a lot. When ACA
Wonderful.
started, I was one of the first students, you know, and I remember waiting every week for the new content. I was so excited about it, you know, so excited. It started in me something like the need to spread the information, you know, to teach other people like you. And you are something like, let's say, role model for me in this. So thank you for that. Look, as you can see, there is not a good situation in the world for trainers and nutritionists. Do you have some tips or some points for our people, for trainers and nutritionists in these times? What should you do as a nutritionist or as a trainer in COVID situation?
It's not about, I would concentrate on what you don't do rather than what you do. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, we're in this position here where gyms are closed, people don't have that direct contact. But ultimately, if you summarize it all and put it into a very simple way of looking at things, is that you don't have a facility. That's all. Mm-hmm. You know, that is the only difference. You know, and coaches seem to forget this fact, is that you just don't have a facility. That doesn't mean you can't coach. That doesn't mean you can't train people. That doesn't mean you can't, you know, provide people with plans. It doesn't mean that you can't help people. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that you don't have a facility, you know. So if your whole business hinged on that facility and being able to be face to face with the person that you're serving, you need to rethink your business to start with anyways. So, you know, ultimately there is no, you know, we live in and work in a service industry. We can continue to service the needs and the requirements of our clients without a facility. You know, ultimately everybody's in the same boat. Everybody who's out there wants to be trained and wants to improve their nutrition. They still want to do that. Mm-hmm. They didn't all of a sudden, the moment the gym's closed, decide that, I don't want to do any of this anymore because the gym is closed. You know, It's a bit like saying, look, it's a bit like somebody saying that, you know, they don't want to drive anymore because the car's broken down. You know, I now don't want to drive anymore because I haven't got a car. It doesn't change the fact that you still want to drive. You still want to go places. You still want to travel places and things like this. It's, you know, so we just find a different way of doing it. You know, and coaches seem to have massively overcomplicated it and gone, oh my God, everything's closed. I can't be a personal trainer anymore. Yes, you can. You can continue to personal train people. You just don't have a facility. Neither do your clients. Everybody's in the same boat.
Exactly.
You know, it's that simple.
Yeah, I think the same thing. Look, I have some colleagues here in our country, and I see that they are waiting year and a half almost. They are waiting to gym to open, but they are not producing any information, products, services for people. Meanwhile, I am trying to produce. Now is the time. I have more time, so I will focus on spreading more information, creating new videos, new articles, you know, interviews with people like you, to spread it to people and help them at least online to do something. Because like you said, they need to work out, they need to be healthy. And I am the professional. I have to find a way how to deliver them the services, even in these times. Is it right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, you know, it's no different. People didn't, the second that gyms closed, people didn't then lose their goals.
Exactly.
You know, they didn't then all of a sudden go, oh, well, I don't want to stay fit anymore because there's no longer any gyms. You know, they didn't do that.
Exactly.
You know, and there's this huge assumption that personal trainers were like, oh my God, I've had everything taken away from me. No, you haven't. You've had a facility taken away from you. That's it. Nothing more. You know, you've still got a voice, you've still got communication channels, you've still got skills, you've still got abilities, you've still got, you know, you've got technology, which didn't exist before. You've got video cameras, you've got cameras on your phones, you've got all manner of ways of coaching people. But because it's not the way you want to do it, you quit. And you just sucked it all up and went, oh, you know, life's so hard, life's so difficult. bollocks. You know, it's
Exactly.
I'm not sure whether you'll have a direct translation for that, but yeah.
Don't worry. I know what you mean.
But people just don't, you know, everybody's so defeatist about things. And I think that's a mindset thing. But, you know, everybody straight away, they were like, oh, gyms are closed. That's the end of my career. Nonsense.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that it is very important to have strong enough why you are doing what you're doing. And then in hard times, there's no difference. You just go the right way.
Yeah, absolutely.
When we're talking about spare time, I think it is a good time for coaches to educate themselves, to get the new information. Do you have some sources of information that are really good? You know, there are chaos in the information, good, bad info. Many people don't know what to choose, what is right and what is wrong. And of course, not everyone listens to Phil Learney's podcast and his ACA. So are there any other sources besides ACA where you can study or you think is it good for trainers?
Hey, there's millions of sources. There's loads of people putting out really good content. There's loads of people putting out really good education.
Would you recommend someone?
Well, again, that would be kind of it would be bad business practice for me to send somebody to somebody else. I mean, obviously, if they've finished ours,
so
that's a different matter.
How can people decide if this is the right info or not? You know, some critical thinking.
Yeah, critical thinking's got to play a part. You know, you've got to be able to look at information and be, you know, bias free. You have to look at things subjectively. You've got to be able to analyze information, and also one of the things you've got to be able to do is avoid going down these rabbit holes of systems and systematic ways of doing things. You know, people are so obsessed about, look, I've started in the industry, now I've got to align myself with some kind of dietary system, or I've got to align myself with some kind of training system or whatever it might be, when in fact that doesn't have to happen. You know, nobody has to align themselves with anything. You just have to go, look, I've got an individual in front of me who is a human being, and their physiology is different. Their habits, behaviors, the day-to-day life is different. Therefore, their solution is probably not going to be a generic one. Their solution is probably going to be something that is going to need to be tailored to them, made very custom. Therefore, the term personal training comes into play. You know, it's personal. It's all about one-on-one, you know, and if you can't facilitate that and you don't understand what one-on-one training is, you're probably not a personal trainer anyways. You're just a trainer. You know, you're somebody who trains people using generic systems and generic practices and just repeats and repeats and repeats until eventually somebody gets some results, which is how a lot of coaches work. You know, so it's, you know, there isn't a modality that is correct or incorrect. There's just the one that's applied to the wrong situation or in the wrong context. You know, so one dietary system might work wonderfully for one person, yet not for another. You know, then that system needs to be tweaked and it needs to be adjusted and it needs to be manipulated. It needs to accommodate, you know, the livelihood of the individual you're dealing with, the circumstance of the individual you're dealing with, the everything right down to, do they have kids? Are they feeding other people? Do they have social commitments? Do they have business commitments? You know, what kind of commitments do they have outside of just looking after their nutrition and training? Because we seem to have this polarized vision in our industry that anybody that we deal with has to only ever think about nutrition and training. And if they don't do that, they don't take things seriously enough, which is absolute nonsense. Yeah. You know, it means they've got a life outside of the gym and outside of preparing food. You know, not everyone's a bodybuilder, not everyone's a physique competitor, not everybody has the same mentality as a fitness industry person.
Which gets us to, again, Advanced Coaching Academy and the psychology and behavior part of the academy. And Average Joe, I very well remember how you explained the Average Joe mindset and the pizza, etc. You know, how to, the nutrition is not about you cannot eat this, you have to eat this. It's about incorporating the foods the people enjoy, so it is sustainable for them long term. And are there some things that really changed in the Advanced Coaching Academy in last, let's say, 3 or 4 years from the beginning? Do you want to tell something?
Yeah, there's everything's evolved really, and everything's kind of moved into different areas. There's certain things that always remain the same, that there is no real variable. There's updates on research and things like this, but if the research doesn't change a view or you know, the way that we taught that, you know, there's no point in us updating it, no point in us changing it, because it's not wrong, it's not incorrect. And remember, you know, a lot of the modules and a lot of what we teach is all about, again, that term of critical thinking and that being subjective about something, is that there are no absolutes. There's nothing in there where we go, look, and if there is, as you read through it, you'll see the things where we go, in our opinion, or what we think, and we will make that very clear that that is just a viewpoint that we have, or a viewpoint that I had when I was writing it because of my experience with dealing with people. And there might not be science to support it, but this is from my experience. And, you know, the whole course was written with my entire experience in alignment with, you know, actual scientific fact and research and, you know, things that we actually know that are categorically correct. You know, so there was always going to be a viewpoint in there. And there are elements where there's a viewpoint, there's elements where my viewpoint's changed, there's elements where my viewpoint is just completely invalid, you know, because it doesn't tell you anything, it doesn't teach you anything, it's just a viewpoint. So yeah, there's been elements of it that have evolved, elements that have changed, there's stuff we've added, which again is more about behaviors, habits, and how those things, you know, how do people react to those things and how do people use them to develop and change the habits and behaviors of the people they're dealing with. So yeah, there's stuff that evolves. There's always stuff evolving, but there is still a staple. You know, we talk about calories, we talk about macronutrients. They're a staple. You know, nothing's really ever changed with them. The source of where we get them from has changed dramatically. You know, we wouldn't have been having the conversation about refinement or, you know, foods that are overly processed or anything like that. We wouldn't have been having this conversation 100 years ago. But we have to have that conversation now because they exist. You know, so there's a lot of things that are very different with society. There's a lot of things that are culturally different. The conversations you'll be having with your clients will be different than mine because we're in a different country. We have different things at our disposal. We have different restaurants. We have different foods in the supermarkets. We have different cultural things that we consume. There'll be certain things that you probably eat that probably I've never ever had or never ever eaten, and the same the other way around. And we've got to consider all of that stuff. And there may be cultural things that are based around, you know, the demography. There could be things that are based around religion. There could be things that are based around, you know, all manner of things. And we've got to consider all those things. And we've got to consider them in whatever plan that we decide to go with that we think will probably have the most chance of success. And if it does succeed, we've got to understand why it succeeded and where are the details where it failed. It's much like a business analysis. You know, when you look at a business, you've got to look at it subjectively and go, right, what are the bits we're doing well and what are the bits we're not doing well? And if you're not prepared to accept the things you're not doing well, you're not really going to progress. This is the same with nutrition. You've got to accept and you've got to identify the things that are going well and identify the things that aren't. So when your client comes back to you and is non-compliant with whatever you've given them, chances are what you've given them is wrong. It's not the client, it's you. You gave them something that they can't do right at this very moment in time. And that's a coaching problem. That's not a client problem. You know, the client might have aspirations of, you know, I want to get in this shape, in this time, in this quickly. And that's all about managing expectations. You know, and that is another major role of a coach, is to manage expectations. You've got to be able to look at that client and go, look, your expectations are a little bit stretched. You know, what you think is going to happen will only happen if this happens. And then if you don't do all that, you won't get to where you want to as quick as you want to. So if I manage that expectation and tell you that chances are, or the things you're telling me you will do, don't align with the outcome you want in the speed that you want. And then that's managing expectancies. Being able to look at someone and go, look, what you want isn't going to happen. And just being very honest about that and saying, what you want isn't going to happen, and these are the reasons why it won't. You know, whereas a lot of coaches will turn around to someone and say, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, this will happen. And then 12 weeks later, the person hasn't progressed, doesn't look anywhere near what they want it to look like. And as a coach, you're basically lying to them and telling them a load of fibs as to, oh, well, you know, something happened and this didn't go to plan and blah, blah, blah. And maybe it's your metabolism. Maybe it's this. That. No, it's because you're a bad coach. That's why. No other reason. You're a bad coach who manages expectancies really badly.
Yeah, perfect. What I love about your content is practical implications every time. But because I see many people that have very, very great knowledge about nutrition, but they cannot apply it on themselves. for example, nutritionists with the university in nutrition hire me to lose weight because they know everything, but they don't know how practically lose weight on themselves. So I think the application is very important. Look, I've heard that you were obese. You were an obese child. Is it right?
Yeah. I was overweight as a kid.
How was the starting that, what happens to a young Phil that he starts to do personal training, nutrition when he starts as an obese child? I think it is a good story for people.
Well, I didn't start as an obese child. That developed over years of again, bad habits, bad behaviors, and again, I say bad. I say incorrect for the outcome I wanted. Again, that would be the best way to phrase it, because I didn't choose to be overweight. Mm-hmm. That wasn't a choice. My parents didn't choose for me to be overweight. That wasn't a choice of theirs either. What happened was that the habits and behaviors that I procured and developed over those years were ones that didn't match, my input and my output. That's all. I grew up in a pub. I had access to a lot of very hyperpalatable, low nutrient density, high energy foods, which meant that, I was consuming chocolate bars, crisps, full sugar Coke, lemonade, things like this. So, I was probably drinking 500 calories a day at one point, so I gained weight and I was very active. I loved sport, always loved sport, loved the competition, was actually half decent at some of the sports. And over the years, that was one thing I took great enjoyment out of. I enjoyed sport. So in enjoying sport, I got to a certain age, and obviously, being overweight as a kid is, and you being the different one in amongst loads of other people has its own set of problems. And because of that, I thought, right, I'm going to address the problems that I have. And I've got several ways of doing it. One of the things is I can almost succumb to my peers and sort of say, right, I'm actually going to lose weight so I fit in more. But also at the same time, I also wanted to be very different from them. So I started weight training. So I wanted to build muscle. I wanted to be different whilst being different, which is quite ironic, really, is that I set off on a pursuance of going, right, I actually don't want to be the same. I want to be different, but I want to be different in a different way. So I started weight training. So all of a sudden I was the kid at school who was weight training all the time. I was the one who was going to the gym every night. And, and I remember, I went to the gym for years and years and years. From the age of about 14, I think it was 14 or 15, I started. And I would go to the gym sort of 5 days a week after school. So I'd go straight to the gym after school. I'd train. And then I lived about 10 miles away from the town where the gym was. And a good friend of mine used to pick me up after his work and take me home. So I used to go home with him every night after I'd finished at the gym. So, and this is someone who even to this day doesn't realize the impact they had on my life by facilitating that. So it stemmed from there. And when it came to choosing a profession, I was very creative. I wanted to get into graphic design. Graphic design didn't really, at the time, I did a couple of work placements and didn't like them. There was a lot of computers. I was into drawing things and that kind of side of graphic design. And I then favored PE. So I did an A-level PE, physical education, and then went to university and studied sport and exercise science.
Perfect.
So, and that was it really. So it stemmed.
I'm sorry?
It stemmed from a love of something that changed my life.
That's perfect. Do you do your own graphics on ACA or Phil Learney brand?
A lot of it I do, yeah.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I do. I have a very good team of graphic designers now that work for me. Ollie, he's my sort of senior graphic designer, who's phenomenal. He's incredible, and he does bits. But I probably annoy him a little bit because I kind of lead where things are going a lot of the time with a lot of the imagery and a lot of the design and stuff like this. So yeah, I did the original ACA logo. I developed the Be an Athlete logo. There's quite a few gyms and things that I've dealt with friends where I actually did their logos as well, just because I enjoy it. I enjoy doing graphic design and things like this. So a lot of the stuff that you'll see on my channel is normally led by me.
It looks very good. So respect to your
thank you.
Your second profession as a graphic designer. Mr. Learney, how do you define mentor or a leader or coach? How would you define it? What makes a good mentor, let's say? Because I think coach is something like a mentor, at least a bit.
It's to say, as far as I'm concerned, they're very transparent. They're very similar. You know, a mentor is somebody who can guide somebody. A coach is the same thing. You know, in essence, you know, a mentor is, you know, it's just a slightly different capacity, I think. You know, a coach is leading someone from A to B. So is a mentor, but a mentor is maybe just more of a sounding board. It might just be somebody that you throw ideas at and they throw you ideas back and what have you. So they're all very similar in many respects.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you think what makes a good leader or good mentor in your eyes? Or let's say, let's focus on a coach. What is a good coach in Phil Learney's eyes?
How somebody who can communicate. Somebody who can communicate very well to start. You can't be a mentor, you can't be a coach, you can't be a leader, you can't be a manager unless you can communicate well. If you don't listen, you don't learn anything. If you're not willing to listen, you won't learn anything. If you think you have all the answers already, you won't learn anything. And if you then can't communicate that, you're not going to lead very many people. You know, if you don't know how to communicate things, and, you know, you talked about application before, if you can't teach people how to apply things, that information just becomes exactly what it is, which is information. That's all it is. It's just information, you know. So you have a whole bundle of information, and this is what I call kind of, you know, textbook knowledge, you know. And this is one of my gripes to some degree with academia, is that a lot of academia is based on somebody being able to memorize facts. You know, you get graded on the fact that you can remember things and remember facts and remember and a lot of examinations, you know, examinations are written largely. You know, they're questions that you have to have answers to. So again, it's a memory trial. You know, for the most part, there is no application. There's very little in the way of, you know, you have to go away and do something and accomplish something in order to get graded or awarded with this thing. So this is one of the, you know, the gripes I've always had with academia, is that a lot of it is just, it's a memory trial. It's, you know, can you remember and recite information? And obviously the repetition of that. So studying, largely, I remember when I was at school, was all about just reading things again and again and again and again and again until you can remember them. And then being able to walk into an exam and still be able to remember them. And if you remembered them well, you were classed as academic. If you didn't remember them well, you know, you were down. You were in the lower grades, and you were classed as a non-academic. And, you know, so for somebody who I was very mediocre in my GCSEs. I was very mediocre in my A levels. You know, I got onto a sports science course. I completed my sports science course, did very well out of that. But ultimately it was, you know, had I left the course learning to what I was being taught, I would have never got anywhere. But the fact is I went away and I had to reconfigure the way that I would take that information in. So that was when I started writing. So a lot of the learning that I had was because I'd take the information that I learned that I didn't quite understand, and then I'd write it down until I understood it. So I became very good at writing things down in a formative way that people can understand things. Hence, you know, the academy developed. Perfect. So, you know, so there's all those elements, and also being able to vocalize it. So, you know, when I step on stage and I'm at conventions or whatever it might be, and talking on podcasts and things like this, it's that ability to be able to convey information, which is something that, you know, over the years I've gotten better at. And, you know, I will continue, I hope, to get better at it and be able to get across my point very, very quickly and very succinctly. And if I can do that, I'm very good at my job. And you know, it continues to be of value to people. And I mean, for the amount of time that you followed me, I'd like to think that I've become a better speaker during that time. Again, I practice. I do it a lot. I recorded in the last 3 weeks. I've been on 7 podcasts in the last 3 weeks. So, you know, I talk a lot. You know, I talk a lot, and I do my best to listen. And unfortunately, because I don't coach very, very often now. Certainly in a one-to-one capacity, I don't coach at all. But it's, you know, I do mentoring. I speak to people on, again, Zoom, and we do consultancy over Zoom and things like this. And I still do bits and pieces of that. And I help people with their businesses and things like this. So I enjoy it. I enjoy communicating and hopefully conveying information that can help other people.
Very good. I have other question. Do you have some tips for personal trainers or nutritionists in these times, you know, regarding some kind of business knowledge or business application? What should business-wise people do these times?
Well,
I mean, in COVID time.
Again, really, probably patronizing some people, but you need to take stock. You need to understand what's coming in, what's going out financially. When anything like this hits, or there's any kind of problem financially, you need to take stock. You need to find out what revenue have I got coming in and what revenue have I got going out. How long is that going to last me? How long have I got before things start to go the wrong way? You then need to ascertain probably what you need to do to survive. So what is the baseline? It's no different to any other business. You take stock of your numbers to start with, and then you figure out whether business is feasible. I see this so often when people do things like open gyms. So many people in our industry, they're like, I want to open a gym, blah, blah, blah. And nobody sits down and actually does the maths. Nobody sits down and gets a calculator out and spends, 2 or 3 days working out the financials of something. Then you've got to work out the forecasts because a lot of it's unpredictable. You've got to then, I've seen people open gyms, which, they have a square footage of this gym and they have a number of people that can go to this gym, but they forget that they need parking. And they open a gym and there's nowhere for anybody to park. So the gym will fill. And they forget this. And they forget about the logistics. And this is just the same as coaching, right? Is that people forget about the logistics. People say, right, you got to go home, you got to prepare your food. What if that person can't cook? At what point did you ask that person if they've got the cooking skills to be able to prepare this food? A lot of time they don't. So what they do is they don't want to turn around to you and tell you that they can't cook because that's quite embarrassing. So they don't tell you. They go away, they struggle, then they just quit because it's too hard, it's too difficult. Or they're creating this food that tastes horrendous, is overcooked, undercooked, whatever it might be. But coaches just don't have to ask the question. And this is like in business, is that you've got to take stock, you've got to understand what's going in, what's coming out. And if you don't do that, you've got no chance. You're just winging it on a daily basis. I can tell you every day what our income is. I can tell you every day what our outgoings are. I can tell you every day what kind of growth we've got, what kind of, drop-off we've got. I can tell you all those statistics. Sometimes I'm going to have to refer to a computer screen to tell you them, but I've got them all in front of me. I'm not going to be able to remember them all or recite them all. And again, we go back in academia. That was something I wasn't very good at academically. I don't have, great capacity for memorizing things. I have a great capacity for memorizing moments. I'm the sort of person that if I sit in the passenger seat of a car, I can tell you exactly where we went and how we went about getting there. If I'm driving, that's different. Because driving, I don't take things in. I just look at the road in front of me. I look at the road in front of me. So if I'm a passenger, I could take on the journey. I look around, I look for marks, I look for things and objects and people and places and blah, blah, blah. And I'm great at that. But you put me in the driving seat, I'm terrible. My wife will tell you I'm awful at directions if I'm driving. But if I'm in the passenger seat, I remember stuff. And this was a challenge that I personally had, and a challenge I know a lot of people have, their ability to retain and recite information. And if you can't do that, you need all that in front of you. I've got a laptop here, I've got a desktop here, I've got literally, I think there must be 45 tabs open on here on my desktop. I've probably got, I reckon, if I open the files up from the little stacks that you're able to do on Mac, it would literally fill my entire screen. And it's all just information. It's all notes. I've got 2 notepads right here. I've got one here for different notes. I've got Post-it notes, hundreds of them, all around me, telling me what I'm doing today. And that's the way that I process information, and how I retain information and how I get things done.
I just want to show what I have here. The greatest book I've read, really, very practical. Look, I wanted to say that what I admire about you, I want people to hear it because I didn't know before, is that, look, many experts or successful people, mainly in aesthetic industries, when they have a new car, they take a photo with the new car. They just take a photo of their apps and they say, yeah, this was my client. I'm so successful. You don't do this. I never knew you had a Ferrari before you sold it on Facebook. I never knew you've trained the Game of Thrones Knight Lady or the Neo, the entrepreneur, the singer. And it is crazy. How can person like you stay so humble when you are so successful? I really mean this.
it's not. It's it's stuff like that shouldn't. I don't think it should make a difference to people. It's. I trained a person who happened to be in a film in a very successful series. A lot of the stuff you'll see behind me there's remnants of people I've worked with. There's movie stuff and things like this, and it's a nice memory for me, and it's a nice thing for me to have done. I've got a picture of my car up there that I own. I don't have it anymore. And again, the reason that I posted about it on social eventually when I sold it was because it had some context to it. It was to explain to people that it wasn't this just on a whim. I wasn't buying something to parade in front of people. I wasn't buying something to show off. I wasn't buying something and it was a very thought out, logical process, me purchasing this particular thing. It was a car I dreamt of as a kid. I used to have a poster on my wall of that particular car in a slightly different color, but it was of that particular car. And I was like, one day I'm going to own that. And there was two things, and you maybe heard me talk about it. There's two things in my life that, from a material perspective, and I know that's not, people look at material things, but there was just these two things that from my childhood I wanted to own, and that's pretty much it. There's nothing else really that throughout my life, everybody wants to own their own home and things like this and blah blah blah. But really, with respect to material goods, there was a car and there was a watch, and the reason the watch came about is because my parents took a holiday to Turkey when I was quite young.
Uh-huh.
We used to go away in the summer holidays, and we used to stay with one of our aunties in the summer holidays, and quite often when parents they'd head off and have a holiday on their own, a bit of a break from the kids, which I totally get. And we'd had this lovely holiday over in the northeast with my auntie and my uncle, and it was really good fun. And they enjoyed it because they couldn't have kids, so they and it was great. But my parents returned with this fake watch. At the time, and I think even to this day, you can buy very good fake watches in Turkey, in the markets and things like this. So they came back with this fake Rolex, and I remember putting it on, and I remember wearing it and knowing full well it was fake, right? I knew this watch was fake, but I remember we did this trip to London with the rugby team. I remember wearing it, and I walked into, I think we went to Harrods, or it was either Harrods or Selfridges or one of these big posh department stores, and I saw my watch in this cabinet, or the copy that I had in this cabinet, and I looked at the price of it, and the price was like, I think it was about £12,000 for this watch. And I remember, how it made me feel wearing this watch, even though I knew it was fake. It was how it made me feel. And I was like, that's quite it's quite a thing. It made me feel successful. It made me remind me of things to work hard. And I always think material goods are great for that. That aspect of anything is that if you've got something, and I always remember, I'd walk out my front door and I'd look at my watch, and it would always remind me to continue to work hard and continue to do things. And ultimately, if there's anything ever that I wanted in life, material wise, I can go after it and I can get it. And it was, and it was just that. And obviously the story behind the car was, I bought the car and actually sold it and made a profit, because I did my research on it. Yeah. Well, I didn't. I lost money overall because of obviously fuel and servicing and blah blah blah. But yeah, I bought the car and I sold it for £5,000 more than I bought it for.
Respect, so, straight, like my father would say.
No, because it was an investment, and I'm big into this. I was actually, me and my wife were chatting about this last night, and again about watches, about things that you purchase that just lose value almost immediately, right? I'd never buy a new car because the second you drive it off a forecourt, you've lost 20%, roughly. So I just don't see the point in that, and there's a lot of people out there living up to this false world that social media gives, that you've got to have a picture of you on a forecourt buying this new car every once in a while, and people see that as a massively impressive thing. But I see it as a massively stupid thing a lot of the time. People are buying cars, firstly, that they can't afford. And just incidentally, the Ferrari I bought outright, it wasn't financed. I paid cash for it. So that's the largest. I couldn't pay it all in one. They wouldn't permit it with the cards that I had. So I used a debit card, which takes it obviously straight out of your bank. But that's the largest cash payment I've made out of my bank account ever. And the single payment was about £48,000, I think it was, all in one go. And it was, you know, and that was the thing. I bought the car and I wasn't in debt. I didn't owe money on it. That was my car. I owned it. And the day I sold it, that money came back completely to me. So I got to drive around my dream car for about 5 years, and ultimately it cost me a couple of £1,000s. That was it.
Perfect. It was, you know, worth it, right?
Oh, massively. You know, because I ticked that box. That thing that I wanted as a kid. Yeah, I ticked that box. You know, I wanted to own a Ferrari at some point in my life. I've done that. I wanted to have the car that I dreamt of as a kid, and I've done that. And it doesn't really serve much of a purpose now, because it's a 2-seater car, and we're a family of 5. So it doesn't have, you know, and ultimately the reason I sold it in the end was the fact it just wasn't getting driven. Mm-hmm. You know, we had a family car as well, and you know, we spent more time on that. So it was, you know, you've just got to understand why things exist. And I think the problem is a lot of the time now is that we're led by this false perception of what, you know, you've got to parade around on social media, and you've got to be the best, or you've got to be spending the most money, or you've got to be doing all this thing. And this is the reason why most people are in debt, you know, because they're chasing something that, don't buy things you can't afford. You know, don't rack up debts on things. And I think the problem is we're led by media. We're led by this perception that you've got to have the best and the latest trainers, and you've got to have the best courts, and you've got to have all these different things. We've got some wonderful luxury things in our, you know, in our household, but I guarantee that we could get rid of every single one of them pretty much for what we paid for it.
Mm-hmm. I think today people want to more look like they're successful than to be successful. Because when you look on successful people, they don't own expensive cars if it is not a part of a plan, like you've said, that they have some business with it, or it is investment.
Vehicles are great investments if you know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Vehicles are great investment. Watches are great investments. Jewelry is great investment. Mm-hmm. Even handbags are great investments if you do your homework. Mm-hmm. You know, but the problem is that, but it's also this thing about, you know, we talk about, and again, we're kind of going off on a tangent here, but things like fast fashion. You know, people are buying these clothes that have no resale value. They've got no value to somebody, you know, on the other end of anything. Whereas, you know, there's a lot of things out there that do have value to people. You know, you can get pleasure out of them, then sell them on, or you can trade them, or whatever it might be, for something else. And you're not losing huge amounts of money. And you know, this is the same with, you know, you talk about food, and food is, prepare your own food, you'll save a lot of money. But in order to prepare your own food, you've got to have the skills to be able to cook. So is acquiring the skill of cooking something that's going to save someone a lot of money? And we make a real point of trying to, you know, teach our kids the skill of cooking, because that's going to not only, it's going to help them stand out as they get older, because very few people can cook. So we're teaching them a practical skill that a lot of people don't have. They're going to be able to cook for their partners, cook for their family, which is a lovely thing to do. And it feels good to be able to present something and put something in front of people. And you know, these are valuable skills, and you've got to remember these things, you know, and these are things that are dying a death. Communication is dying a death. People now spend more time texting people and phoning people, or speaking to people, or chatting to people, or whatever it might be.
That's true.
So yeah, a lot of lessons.
Mm-hmm. Is there any business success that you are proud of the most in your life?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, because business is an ongoing thing, and I think we're all guilty. And I think anybody who's successful, or whatever it might be, and this is something I've talked about with several people over the last few weeks on podcasts, actually, where I've been guests on their podcasts, and you know, I think there's things where you struggle to reward yourself. I struggle with taking a moment and just going, well done, you did well there. You know, I'll take something like that, and then I'm moving on to the next thing and going, right, what next? You know, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? And then occasionally you sit back and go, yeah, you know, you sat in a nice house, you sat with nice things around you. You're able to go on nice holidays. You're able to, you know, you're not looking at your bank balance every 5 minutes and wondering if you can afford to do something. You just do it. And I guess that is probably the most successful thing in business for me, was, you know, just trivial things. Like, I remember as a kid when we used to go out in the local town, And I remember you'd have this lovely evening, you know, this lovely night, you'd spend too much money. And then I'd get in this taxi. So for us, we had to get these taxis home. And I remember sitting in the back of this taxi, and I just used to sit there and stare at this meter, just going up and up and up and up. And it kind of used to ruin my night, because I'd be like, you know, when's this going to stop? And it used to cost us about 30, 35 pounds to get home, which, you know, when I was 18, that was a lot of money, you know, so it would cost us. And if you were fortunate enough, you got together with a bunch of your mates and we all went home together, and it cost us £10 each, but it was still £10. So it was a big deal. And I remember, you know, watching taxi meters, and I remember moving to London, and I used to get in black cabs, and I'd watch these meters go up. And then, you know, one day I stopped doing it, and I stopped panicking and worrying about that aspect of life, of that kind of, oh my God, I can't afford to live this, you know. And I could still be in that situation right now if we spent money outside of our means, which is so easy to do. I think there's so many people you know, they live on credit cards and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I don't, you know, I've got business credit cards in my wallet, but there's nothing on them. You know, they're just there because the bank give us them, and, you know, they're there for emergency. You know, I'm sure one of them is probably expired, but, you know, because there are lots of better ways to get credit for businesses and to acquire money for business, you know, propositions and things like this, and investments and blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of smarter ways of doing things. And I think we're just we're in an industry, and we're in a world where people are given convenience at all, you know, all aspects, right? You know, they're giving convenience with money, they're giving convenience with food, they're giving convenience with everything. And it just almost ruined the outcome in many respects.
Yeah, perfect. Well said. I have last one question, but the most important one. What is your favorite exercise?
Favorite exercise?
Yeah.
Well, if we're talking gyms, and we're talking gym movements, my favorite exercise, I don't know, because I go through little phases of enjoying one thing more than another. At the moment, I'm really, at the moment, I'm really enjoying, I'm actually into cycling. I'm really enjoying cycling.
High intensity interval training?
To some degree. It varies. You know, I use Zwift, which is just a platform that you can follow tracks and things like this on. You know, I have a turbo trainer set up with a nice bike, and I'm quite enjoying that at the moment. With regards to weightlifting, I think I'll always be a fan of deadlifting.
Yeah, I hope you say that.
Yeah, deadlifting has always been. But again, I think that's because I'm quite good at it.
Yeah,
you always favor things you could.
How was your max on your deadlift? The max weight you've lifted?
320 kilos, I think. Possibly more than that. No, I think it was 320. I think was my maximum lift.
What was your body weight at that time?
That was at 100 kilos.
Respect, really strong.
So yeah, 320. I think it was. Yeah.
But you don't do powerlifting anymore.
No. I don't. Again, it's a time thing. You know, I loved powerlifting when I did it, but it was, you know, training sessions are long. You know, it's a lot of time, a lot of preparation, a lot of focus on competitions, a lot of focus on diet, things like this. And now I have a lot more responsibilities outside of that. Not to say I couldn't go back and do it. And people are like, well, you know, that's no excuse. It's not an excuse. It's just the fact that I have things that I enjoy way more. You know, I miss it at times, just like a lot of the sports I played throughout. Like I miss playing rugby, I miss playing cricket, but it's just at times, you know, there's a lot of things that, and there's a lot more enjoyment in my life doing other and different things now. So, you know, I'm very lucky. Well, I say I'm very lucky. I'm unfortunate. There's, you know, there isn't a part of my life I don't enjoy. You know, I enjoy my work. I look forward to work. I look forward to time off work. I look forward to time with my family. I look forward to doing things outside of work. You know, I enjoy doing creative things. I enjoy going to the gym. I enjoy exercising. I enjoy going out for a walk. There isn't anything in life that I don't really enjoy. Perfect. You know, so I'm in a very fortunate situation. But again, I think that's, you know, a lot of it's down to hard work. A lot of it is down to, you know, particularly mindset. I think you can look at things with a, you know, that glass half full mentality. Where, you know, I never see a glass half empty. You know, I just don't believe in it. I just think there's a particular way of looking at things, and whatever it might be. And again, I hope I reflected that with my answer to the COVID thing. Is that people just look at the worst case scenario all the time. They panic and they worry, and I get that you worry, but sometimes it's just a matter of looking at the situation, going, look, the situation, that's all it is. Gyms are closed. That's all. You know, nothing else has changed. You've still got your clients. You've still got people who want nutritional and training advice and blah, blah, blah. But gyms are closed. That's it. You know, it's all that happened.
Well said. That's what I call success thinking, what you just said in this question. Really perfect. Mr. Learney, is there if you had just one thing to say to our listeners, just one thing, advice or anything, what would you say to them?
Oh, hey. I can't really. You can't really summarize anything. I mean, it's, you know, I'd like to think that throughout the, you know, the podcast we've covered a lot of subjects and a lot of things, and you know, there is no. It's a bit like a generic answer that people want with fitness and nutrition and blah blah blah. I don't think there is one. I think everybody's situation is different. I think you've got to look at things differently, you know, and I think that's something people need to learn. You know, look at mindset and look at the research on mindset, look at the way that things, you know, and that will be a great way for a lot of people to go. And it just change your outlook on everything. You just change the way you look at things, you know, and I think that's a massive, massive factor. You know, it's success in business and success in it, you know, all aspects of life. And, you know, there's a lot of research around it, the way that you think about things and the way that you can almost perceive things happening and blah, blah, blah. And it's not wishy-washy stuff. It's, you know, it's generally, it's just you set yourself on a course and you have the right mindset on that course, you'll succeed in whatever guise that takes.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Learney,
very welcome.
Really, again, thank you for your time. I know you're a busy person. I will translate this into Czech and I will share it with you. It will be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube for people.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for having me, Martin.
Have a fine day, Mr. Learney.
Yes, you too. Take care.
Take care.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.